Hey everyone. Today we're going to be covering the family history. So, if you've been following along with some of the videos I've been posting recently, I started going through the patient encounter, how to interview and collect a medical history. My first video was on the chief complaint and the history of present illness. My last video was on past medical history, and this video is going to be on family history. So, I plan to keep it pretty short, simple. I know I always have trouble keeping things short and simple, but I just want to really give you some tips and tricks on how I like to collect a family history. So let's go ahead and look at our cheat sheet. Okay. Um, Anytime we transition from one part of the history to the other, we should have a transition statement. And this is actually part of your patient encounter practical rubric. So we want to transition with a statement, right? Thank you for that information that you shared about your medical history. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions about your family history. Okay. Now, family history can be tricky because I don't know about y'all, but especially down here in the Rio Grande Valley, we have big Hispanic families. Okay. And so when I say family, I'm thinking like the 20, my cousins, dogs, whatever. So just be sure the one first trick that I have for you is to make sure to clarify which family members you are most concerned about, that you want to hear about. So the ones that we are most concerned about from a history taking standpoint are going to be the patient's parents, grandparents, any children they might have, and siblings. Okay. So that's what I like to say. By family history, I'm most concerned with hearing a little bit more about your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, and any children that you might have. Okay, so that's where you're going to be specific. We want first and second degree relatives. Be sure to ask or try to ascertain at some point if these family members are biological. Because if the patient is adopted, learning about the family history of their adoptive family is not as important, if that makes sense. Um, a lot of times, just like with past medical history and other components of the other historical things like social history and ROS, a lot of this information is collected and filled out by the patient before the visit. So, like, they'll get sent an email or text message and they'll go ahead and like fill in all this information ahead of time. Or maybe when they arrive at their appointment, they'll be given a clipboard and some sheets to fill out that have some information about their family history. So if you already have this information in front of you, just review it with the patient. And so you don't have to ask it all over again. I know patients get frustrated if you ask the same question more than once. And they kind of lose a little bit of faith in you if you repeat yourself, or if they feel like you're not paying attention to them. So just use that if you have it available to you. For a practical, we're going to have to ask it. Okay. So, things that you want to ask as well are the age of their family member, their present health, and if they're passed away, if they've already passed away, we want to ask them at what age they passed and what was their cause of death. So, the way that I like to get into family history, like I said, I transition, I clarify which family members I'm most concerned about. And then there's two routes you can take. And I'll give you my 2 cents on my 3 cents on which one I would recommend. But there's the open-ended route, which we're usually taught to engage our patients with open-ended questions. But I've found that it can open a can of worms. But an open-ended version would this be like, do you have any diseases or conditions that seem to run in your family? Okay. Then you can wait and see what they give you and then kind of work with that. If they don't know, you can give them some examples. Do you have any high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, asthma, things like that? Or, and I think this might be easier for a patient encounter practical standpoint, you can start with closed-ended statements or questions. You could say, all right, so now let's start with your mother's side of the family. Is your maternal grandmother still living? Yes. Okay. Does she have any medical issues? Boom, you check that one off. And what I like to do, like on my little cheat sheet, is actually will write something like, I'll put let me see if I can. I'll put like, let me see if I can write on here. I think I can. Let's see, draw. All right, yeah. Let's see. So I'll put like, father, mother. I'll put grandfather, grandmother, and then same thing, grandfather, mother, grandfather, and then I'll put siblings, children. And then that way, as I'm asking him, I'm like, okay, well, does your um, maternal grandmother, is she still living? Yes. Okay. Does she have any medical problems? Well, yeah, she has diabetes. Okay. Well, then if she gives you that, then you have to ask, um, how long has she had diabetes? How is her current health? Does she take any medications? Is she compliant? You can ask a bunch of questions about it, but after that, you click this off. What about your maternal grandfather? Oh, well, he passed away. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Always acknowledge their loss, right? And then from there, you can ask them, at what age did they pass? What was their cause of death? Boom. All right, now what about your mom? And then go from there. You'll go from one family member to the other. It can take a long time, but we have in the past coached our simulated patients to kind of pick and choose what they answer so that we can kind of make this process a more streamlined, flowy one. Now, in the clinic, anything goes, right? You never know what your patients are going to say. They might have a lot to share. And so you just have to kind of go with that. All right, so once we've gone through all of the family members that we need for our practical, which are parents, grandparents, siblings, and any children that they have, and we've gotten a good idea of their family history, we might want to prompt some other kind of more global questions. So any heritable illnesses, heritable are like sickle cell, cystic fibrosis, things that you can inherit from one line to another. Now, I don't always ask this. This is just an example of something that you could potentially ask about. Chronic diseases, I always try to ascertain, and I think patients kind of know that that's what you're looking for, so they will share that with you. If maybe they're there for their pregnancy, you might want to ask specifically about pregnancy related stuff, but I don't always ask that. Remember, some that are on your patient encounter checklist that you have to ask, okay, they are separate checkboxes, are these three things, okay? Psychiatric disease, drug and alcohol dependence, and not toxic exposure, just psychiatric, drugs, and alcohol, okay? So the word psychiatric, I don't know. That kind of makes me think like a mental institution or something. Um, you might ask, any history of any behavioral health issues or mental health issues that run in the family. Okay. So you want to ask that question. And then drug or alcohol dependence, same thing. Don't use the word abuse. I don't really like that word. Any history of drug or alcohol dependence that runs in your family. Okay. And then this is just mostly in kiddos. We do some lead screenings in kiddos, so you'd want to ask about that. But don't ask all of these things for all of your patients. You'll spend way too long. And I actually recently looked up the suggested timing for each section of your practical exam. Let me see if I can pull that up really quickly because I think that's helpful. All right, I couldn't find my document, so I actually just kind of put it in here. So you have 20 minutes for your patient encounter practical. Okay, 20 minutes can go by pretty fast, but I think it's more than enough time to get a good history. For the HPI that we covered before, the recommended time is about 6 minutes or less. Just to make sure we can fit all this history in there. For the past medical history, it shouldn't take you more than about 3 minutes. Same for family history. 3 minutes is the recommended time. And I think if you get good, you practice a lot, you get efficient at this, I think it's more than doable. Okay. So that's all I wanted to cover today. Hopefully it was helpful for you to kind of look at the family history and the components of the family history. In the next video, we'll be covering social history, which I think is kind of fun. It's kind of a fun history to gather from your patient. And we'll go from there. Okay. So keep practicing. The more practice you get, the easier this will be for you on a practical day. So stay tuned for my next video.